All right. So today I thought I'd talk about a cultivar I've not had before, Milenio. This is a Costa Rica Lourdes Sumava Milenio variety. It's an F1 hybrid. Arrival December 25, 965 a pound. And this is what the green looks like. And it kind of looks like a honey process. And I guess it's sort of in between a mechanically washed and a white honey is what they call it in Costa Rica. It really, for all intents and purposes, it's like a washed coffee, but it's slightly different process. And I did 3 roast levels on this, so I kind of kept it on the light. And this was the 1/3 of the way through first crack, so pretty light. It came up with 12% weight loss. This was 2/3 of the way through first crack at 12.9% weight loss. You can take a look at that. And then this is end of first crack, 13.8% weight loss. And, did some comparisons to some more traditional varietals here. I've got Typica from Costa Rica. I've got a Bourbon from Guatemala. Catura from Costa Rica, and then this is also sort of like a robusta, has robusta lineage in it. It's a Catigua from Laos, and then of course birthplace of coffee, Ethiopia. So timeline-wise, you're looking at Ethiopia. The genetics go back 600,000 years. Is what they say. So as far as humans are concerned, it's always been there. It's always been in the forests of Ethiopia. Then human intervention, some seeds are taken to Yemen, and we get Typica in the 1450s. Seeds again travel to Bourbon Islands, and we get Bourbon. That's so far we're just kind of moving coffee, replanting it as examples here. Then in Brazil in 1915-ish, they noticed that there's a dwarf size plant that they like to work with. It's easier to farm. It has higher yields. And of course, this is Costa Rica Tarazula amanita as an example of that. And so this spreads throughout Central and South America. It's still very common. It is susceptible to disease like leaf rust, though. And then we start getting in the 1980s some of these Robusta genetics mixed in. So this is a Catigua, which is a mix of a Timor hybrid and Catuai. And benefits there, it's high cup quality and it's resistant to leaf rust. It's just that it's not, as you move along and consumers get higher and higher standards of what they expect as a clean cup, it's not quite as clean. And so that's where the F1 hybrids and other hybrids, there's a lot of hybrid research going on right now. And it's not genetically modified. It's not Franken coffee, using very traditional methods. In fact, it's like they're using, let me see if I can show you here. They're using like paint brushes to collect pollen from one plant. So let's say a Robusta lineage, like a Sarchamore or Timor hybrid, and they are brushing off the pollen of it and collecting it in like a test tube. And then they're going to go to the other varietal that they're working with. So let's say an Ethiopia heirloom varietal. And then in terms of my blind cupping of this bean, I did the 3 roast levels, 1/3 through first crack, 2/3 fully through first crack. And I blind cupped it total of 3 times, starting about a week after roast. And I thought this was like right up there with all these other varietals. There was no like a tell or a signature flavor that kind of gave it away as being a hybrid. all the samples were, I would say, like bright, juicy, really clean, balanced, and kind of like a neutral flavor. So not a fruity or not a floral cup, a little maybe apple here and there, but very similar to the Typica. In fact, I would go back and forth. Like one round of cupping, I would say, yeah, I blind picked Milenio as like my favorite. Another time it was the Typica. Another time it was the Bourbon. And I would say the Catigua, this sample was from Laos. This one you did get a little bit of that Robusta in there once in a while. It was very, very light. So you get a little herbal quality, maybe some bell pepper, something a little earthy. But even that was a really nice sample. I really enjoyed cupping these. This was a really fun cupping, actually. And then, of course, Ethiopia. Ethiopia tastes very different. I did include that in my blind cupping. It was, so different. Very obvious citrus, floral, peach kind of thing. So again, the Milenio, it was developed, I think, in the 2000s. This is Timor hybrid, Ethiopia, Rume, Sudan hybrid, and it's used for high elevation. I can't spell that, so it says dwarf. It's supposed to say dwarf. So it's more manageable to work with on the farm, good cup score, and resistant to leaf rust. So yeah, I would, it fooled me, could not tell it apart from a lot of these other traditional varietals. It's supposed to be have good productivity, of course, good cup score, and resistance to leaf rust. So you don't have as much cost, hopefully, in terms of inputs for like fungicide and things like that. So the downside about the hybrids, I guess, is from what I understand, is if you want to replant, so it takes like 3 years for it to get productive after planting the initial plant material, the Milenio plant material, then you get, 10, 15 years of productivity. And if you need to replace because of it's getting old, or you have damage, or you want a new area, you actually cannot replant the seeds because they're genetically unstable. So at that 10, 15 year mark, you probably either need to find the latest, greatest hybrid, or just a different one, or you'd have to go back to whatever commercial vendor you had that had the original plant material. So, but I think we're going to start seeing more hybrids. I know World Coffee Research, if you look up World Coffee Research F1 hybrid, just some good information on that. There's all kinds of institutes working on this, and they have their own, what they call their Final Four hybrids that you'll likely start seeing out there. And I give it a big thumbs up. All right, that's it. Thanks. Happy roasting.